gang. Here's to nights that turn into mornings and friends that turn into family. Cheers!
Hello, and welcome to the Friendship IRL podcast. I'm your host, Alex Alexander. My friends, they would tell you I like to ask the hard questions. You know who I am in the group. I'm the person that's saying, okay, I'm going to ask this question, but don't feel like you have to answer it. And now I can be that friend for you too. Today's episode is with Leah Wiseman Fink. Leah is, as I like to say, well, she's doing the thing. She is truly a community builder, not just for herself and her family, but you'll notice that community is so important to Leah that she is prioritizing a little bit of her time to help others build community as well. When I first chatted with Leah, she casually mentioned that she grew up in the Midwest with a big Jewish family and everybody was together all the time. This part of her story really caught my attention because I think that what she has built today is really similar to what she had growing up. Leah moved to Brooklyn, New York 20 years ago, and over that time, she has leaned into community and friendship to create a similar community-centric life for her and her family. You know, I've talked about this before. I think community building is a skill set. And once you learn that skill set, it stays with you forever. Anytime you want to build a new community to support a new part of your life, you might think to yourself, it's going to be a little bit of work, but you know how to do it. So you're more likely to. And that is what Leah has done time and time again. Now, Leah is a multi-hyphenate and she's balancing many different hats in her current season of life. She's a life coach and a business coach. Leah is the co-owner of Williamsburg Pizza, which is a pizza chain based in Brooklyn, New York. She is the mother of 2 and a wife. She's also an active moderator for a Brooklyn-based Facebook group called Baby Hooey, meant for new parents to meet each other and take those connections out in the real world. She's an active member of the New York entrepreneur community. Like I said, she's doing the thing. So let's dive into today's episode because it is rich with tangible ways you might be able to implement some of this in your own life. Leah, I'm so excited that you're here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a great conversation.
I'm excited too.
We were just talking about putting messages on pizza, and then we were like, we got to hit record. So I think that's a great, can you tell people a little bit about who you are, where you're from, what you're doing?
Sure. My name is Leah Wiseman Fink. I am from Brooklyn, New York. I'm originally from Michigan, but I've been here 20 years. So I think that makes me from Brooklyn, New York. I am a mom of 2 little ones. I am the co-owner of Williamsburg Pizza, and I'm also a leadership coach. So those are some of the hats I wear. I think I could name about 5 more, but let's go with those for today. Those will be my titles. Yeah.
Yeah. Moral of the story, you got a lot of balls in the air that you are juggling all the time for yourself, your clients, your family, your community, lots of things all at once. So we were just literally talking about, we're going to release this episode around the time that an article about you comes out.
Yeah.
And you were telling me that because you own the pizzeria, one of the ways you love showing up for people is by sending food.
Yes.
Tell me all the creative ways to send somebody a pizza. Give me some inspo here because
yes,
maybe I should start doing this.
It's actually absolutely. Again, I have the pizzeria at my fingertips. So for me, it's easier than it might be for someone else. But somebody's sick or somebody's struggling or a new mom or congratulations. Sometimes people ask me or I think in my head, what can I do for them? And 2 things. 1, owning the pizzeria. 2, I'm a Jewish mom. So this also comes naturally to me. It's obviously sending food. Mm-hmm. And I always send pizza because again, that's at my fingertips, but it just everybody needs to eat. It warms people's hearts.
Mm-hmm.
It cheers them up. It often brings people together. Like that's a whole other, right? Like I can, say a bunch of friends, we haven't seen each other. Maybe they live in different neighborhoods. Let's just all bring the pizza and, someone else has a space and we, can get together. So it really is one of my very favorite tools to use to take care of people and bring people together.
Yeah, I was going to say at the heart of it, it sounds like community is super important to you.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure.
And I mean, pizza makes sense, right? When you got to feed a bunch of people,
yeah,
you order some pizza. And on one hand, like that might seem simple and like, oh, I just ordered pizza. But there really is just something about like having enough that anybody can be there. Like people can keep coming, that I think is like underlying in pizza. And I love that. It's like you send a friend pizza who's a new mom. And if, I don't know, more family are over or something, like there's enough.
Yeah, absolutely. Or like I remember sending pizza to someone who just had knee surgery and she had a whole bunch of family over taking care of her and like over for dinner. And it was like, she was like, I just like sobbed when the pizza showed up because it took care of that.
Leah, I think after our initial conversation earlier, there are people that come on this podcast and I say that they are, quote unquote, like doing the thing. There's a lot of people out there who are super overwhelmed by community and friendship and building. And like, I mean, I get very basic questions from people just being like, how do I even do this? And then I meet people like you. And in our previous conversation, it's like, well, one, you kind of just got to do it. But we'll talk a little bit about how you've done that. But two, you just have to decide that it's important. And when we talked previously, I think something that really stood out to me is that you, as you mentioned earlier, you grew up in Michigan. And what you told me was that like family, what was modeled as far as community and supporting each other and show up was really family centric. And then obviously you moved to Brooklyn and your family's not there. Can you talk a little bit about what it was like growing up?
Sure. It was chaos, but like happy chaos.
In the best way. Yeah.
In the best way. Actually, there was a time, this could be a whole other episode, but that I hosted a Sunday night dinner at my house. This is in Brooklyn. And it was like my sister and her wife would always come. And then it was whatever other combination of friends, my sister's friends, someone who was in town would come. And I remember my sister-in-law invited a friend and was like, do you want to come to Sunday night dinner? She said something like, it's chaos, but like a happy chaos. Something I might be saying it a little bit wrong, but I was like, that pretty much sums it up. That pretty much sums up what it was like growing up in Michigan. It was like, there was one aunt and uncle's house that we mostly went every Sunday for brunch. Then it was any combination of like, I wouldn't say like less than 20 of us, but like from 15 to 25 people. A lot of bagels, lox. My dad makes a really good lox, onions, and eggs. So that was like a standard. And then you would go to anybody's little league game, recital, band concert. Sometimes it would be like, think about Tuesday, second grade basketball game. And maybe there would be like 20 people there all together. And like 10 of them would be from my family for the one kid. And then everyone else. And that's just like how we just showed up to everything all the time. Sleeping over at my cousin's house, like my mom's sister, like we just slept there most weekends. Like that, it was just like, that's what you did. And it was completely the norm. I never knew anything different. And we all like lived within 20-ish minutes of each other. And that's just exactly how I grew up.
For nobody that can see me when this is audio only, I've like had my hand over my heart. Like I love this so much. And just kind of that like open invite, be there, support each other, casual plans, recurring weekend get-togethers, like show up when you can, which is probably most weekends because like what else are you really doing? Sometimes there's stuff, but otherwise like, yeah, I'll be there for a while. Like come as you are. It just makes me so happy. And I want this for people.
Yeah.
And like your story, so specific, all those memories. I love it so much.
Yeah. Even like last summer, my dad rented a house in northern Michigan, which is like, lakes and hiking and beautiful. And the house was like for 21 people. And the invite was like, okay, who's coming Just like, who's coming?
Yeah.
My parents have been divorced for 20 years. My mom came.
Yep.
And my stepmom was there, and her mom was there, and my half brothers. It was just like, that's what it was. Came in and out.
I can very much identify with that. There's a house of 21 and we'll fill it. Like our friend group does that. We're like, it's fine. It's fine. We'll book it. Like people will fill the rooms.
Yeah,
Somebody just book the house and like, let's go. Hi, hello. It's me who is over here swooning over this family friend, like show up as you are, centric gathering style, community, everything. I'm swooning, but I want to acknowledge that listening to this may sound like everything you don't want. This may sound so overwhelming. It may sound unattainable. It may feel unfamiliar, and that's okay. Just popping in to say that's okay. Because I know that this is a narrative that's like pushed a little bit as the ideal, and it may not be your ideal. And that's okay. But for other people like me and Leah, it is the ideal. And the one thing I would suggest if this does not appeal to you is instead of looking at the overall vision, look at the pieces of it. Are there any parts of this that are appealing to you? The answer still might be no, but it also might be that, it would be kind of nice if there was a reoccurring get together at a certain time, or it would be nice if the kids could swap back and forth between houses. If you could find family or friends or people that you could get close enough with to do that. If that is the case, by the way, go back and listen to episode 28. Pretty positive it's 28. Go back and listen to episode 28. We talk about slumber parties. Or it might be that it would be nice to have people who show up at those like family soccer games. I don't know what it is, but here's what I'm saying. If any part of this, being a little more integrated in life and less overwhelmed by needing to find pockets solely dedicated to seeing your friends where you just like pretend you don't have all these other responsibilities, but instead doing the work up front to be a little more integrated and a little more easy to just show up in each other's lives on the day to day. Consider if there are parts of that. It doesn't need to be the whole thing, or it might, but if you're overwhelmed, look at the pieces. That's all I'm trying to say. Okay, so you had that, which is, to a lot of people, you still have it. You still have it.
Yeah.
It's just not in a 20-minute drive anymore now that you're in Brooklyn.
Right.
Now you got to fly there.
I will tell you, my son who's 10 and my sister's son who's 11 talk on the phone every single morning before they go to school. They like have a recurring FaceTime. It's really cute. If one of them like misses it, the other one's like, where were you this morning? They're like little old men. So they, it's funny how you can sort of keep it up in a certain way.
And I think that's such a beautiful example for people to hear. Like, just set it up, leave it on the table.
Yeah. The 10 and 11-year-old boys. It's adorable. Yeah.
I'll just throw out that, like, what great habit for him to have, to know that he can stay connected with somebody long distance.
Yeah.
Like, we talk a lot about how to model that, how to like set it up. Because most friendships for kids are out of proximity. Like they go to school and that's their friends, and then they leave and they never really learn like the habits and how intentional you have to be when somebody moves away. So what a cool example for people to hear.
Yeah. We're trying to like take away some like screen time for him, like make it, less. And then we figured out like that phone call. We're like, no, we just aren't going to take that away. You're just going to be able to wake up at 6:30 and talk to your cousin if you want to.
You're really setting him up.
Yeah.
In a great way.
Yeah.
I love that so much. So you moved to Brooklyn, and I'm guessing that you moved in a time of life, like a season of life, where friendship is really encouraged. And I say that because, studies show there's something called the friendship dip that happens in your like 30s and 40s for a lot of people.
Uh-huh.
But if you've been in Brooklyn for 20 years, I'm guessing you moved there around a time where like you were going out with friends all the time. You were doing things with friends. People maybe had kids, maybe didn't. And friendship was really like central. Would you say that a lot of the friendships that you built today are from that time of life, or did you build them maybe a little later into being in Brooklyn?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I moved to New York City when I was 23, like almost right after college.
Mm-hmm.
I had a lot of those friends from college, and we did act like that, over each other's houses all the time, out every weekend, friends with friends. And then we all got married. And some of these people are still very dear friends. And I moved to Brooklyn around 2009. So like 6-ish years into being in New York. And then actually it was motherhood, like becoming a parent. I think I think the opposite of a dip for me, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was having my first son and realizing that that family that I described that I grew up with was not existent in Brooklyn. And okay, now what? Like, now what are we going to do? It was shockingly hard how hard it was to be a mom without family around. And I kind of just like looked around me and I was like, okay, now what? And I started gathering the friends. Like, there was one friend, the first friend I made as a mom, we were both pregnant and we were at the gym together. And I was kind of like, you're pregnant, I'm pregnant. Let's be friends.
But that's what you have to do. Yeah.
Totally. I will never forget. It was like, oh, like we noticed each other's bumps. And then we went to, there's all kinds of mom meetups in the neighborhood, especially in my neighborhood, because it's like very young families. So we're like, okay, let's go to that first one together. And then we like kind of like picked up 2 other moms who were friends with each other and then a few more. And that's how we really formed that first group that we started to emulate, I guess. I mean, when I look at it, like exactly what I had growing up, as in it was a Friday night thing, somebody's house, some people come, some people don't, no invite necessary. We would have pizza usually, you know what I mean? And then also just like random walk-bys or trips together, or that kind of stuff. And it just built from there. Like, now I have 2 kids. So there's a whole other wave of friends with my second. School, of course, you pick up some at school, owning a business, owning businesses. It feels like building on and building on and building on.
Yeah. Just like continuing to grow the community again with like all the different hats and roles and versions and pieces of you.
Yeah, for sure.
And I love what you were saying about like the Friday night recurring, because I think that that's really a thing. Like, if you've been modeled like you were, that the ways to get together with people, like the recurring gatherings, the stop by as you are, the casual text messages, like this stuff can be replicated. You can do it. You have to put energy into it. And you obviously had to put yourself out there and like invite people, and not everyone's going to join. But for anybody out there who's like, this sounds dreamy and I don't know how I would do it, like I said, you just kind of do it. And like, once you get comfortable doing it, you can do it again.
Yeah,
I think.
Absolutely. And I think that to like point to that first moment of the one friend at the gym who were both pregnant and just saying like, what's your number? Do you want to hang out?
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to the gathering together. It's like, I think that first step can really trip people up. But I think that might be the part to concentrate on, to like, can I push myself over the hump to do that?
Yeah, I'm not currently a mom, but I have a number of friends who are. And this past weekend, I was with a friend, and I'm like always encouraging my friends who are moms, to find mom friends. Like, I love them and I show up and like live my best auntie life, but they also need mom friends. And I'm always like encouraging that and telling them. And my friend came to me this weekend. She goes, Alex, I straight up asked a mom at the park for her phone number.
Yes.
And I felt like such a boss.
Yes.
Like,
that's amazing.
I was so worried, and I just had you in my head being like, just do it, just do it, just do it. And she asked, and she was like so proud to tell me, and it made me so happy. Cause you just gotta like do it.
Yeah.
And it's so uncomfortable.
It's so uncomfortable because it's not like when you're in college and you're like in the same classes and you pass each other in the quad or whatever. It's like, no, you have to ask for the number.
Yeah. You have to just be like really direct. Like, hey, I think we're having great conversations when I run into you at the park. Can I have your number? Can we set
Yeah.
up a play date? Can I text you about that thing we talked about? You know, you were just sharing that recommendation. Can I text you for the link to that or whatever? I mean, it's something so simple. My friend who was mom was telling me that, well, I have many friends who are mom, but this specific one was telling me that she was talking to another mom and their entire, like the way she kind of befriended her was asking about the configurations of their stroller.
Wow. Good one.
Yeah. She but really direct, like, hey, can I text you? Will you send me a video of how you have that set up with those pieces? Cause I might need an adapter. And like, that's how she made a friend.
I love it. Whatever works.
Whatever works. And now they're like, they have built on that.
I love it.
But that was a super specific way that she got the ball rolling.
Yeah.
Like it's not always super romantic or dreamy to make these friends.
Totally. I mean, and I have to admit that I have the most easy in. I say, would you like to come over for pizza? So like I cheat. Mine is a complete cheat. But yeah, whatever works. Your stroller. Do you have hand-me-downs? Can I give you hand-me-downs? Like there's a million ways that you can make connections. It's class. I heard there's a good music class. Let's go together. You just find a way.
But see, I don't know if you have a cheat. I think you've just figured out like your opening line.
Yeah, it's true.
And everybody else has an opening line.
Right.
You know, I don't know. Like I think of friends who have like what is it, like one of those blow up bounce houses in their basement. Like, hey, you want to bring your kid over to play in the bounce house? Like that could be your opening line.
I mean, that's a very good one too. Yeah.
Like figure out what your opening line is. Confession. I have never been on dating apps. If you're like, Alex, why the heck is that relevant? I'll get there. 1 second. See, Michael and I met in college before dating apps. We are about to celebrate our 14th year together. So the story I'm about to tell you is not about me and Michael dating. I've never had this experience. But thinking back, my friends, when they were in their prime of dating, I guess, when maybe they were taking dating seriously, and it was a numbers game. They were going out on first dates once a week, twice a week. They didn't have the energy to be thinking of new spots every time they suggested a first date. So instead, they had, I don't know, maybe 3, 4 tried and true first date options in their rotation that they used depending on the situation. They probably had that sushi spot for happy hour. They had another dinner spot. They had a brewery that worked well for a weekend midday. They probably had like one activity. And they would rotate through. They would suggest going to those places. I mean, honestly, some of them used to joke about how the people that worked there probably knew them at this point because they were there so frequently with different people. How does this relate to this episode? Well, I think that this idea of an opening line and a couple tried and true suggestions is pretty genius now that I've listened back, especially for parents trying to make friends, parents who have so many balls up in the air, who are juggling all sorts of things. I get how you might meet some other parents out and about, and the energy it takes to think of what you might enjoy doing together is a lot. You don't have time for that. But if you spend some energy right now or in the next couple days coming up with a few tried and true options, then you can just start throwing those out. You can just make the suggestion. So an example, I went on a walk with a friend of mine. Now, her and I are old friends, but she has a new baby. She's a little cutie, by the way. And she told me, she said, I would love to get together. I go on a walk, rain or shine, every day between 9:30 and 11. Just pick a day and tell me. I normally start my walk from here. Great. I gave her a date. We met up. It could be that there is a park in your neighborhood and you tell someone, hey, I normally go there, I don't know, at 3 p.m. most days. So just send a text and we can meet up there. Could be my suggestion of the bounce house in your backyard. Say that it's open on the weekends, like text on a Saturday. Let's get together. Come up with a couple tried and true suggestions. Have them in your back pocket because then you don't have to use the energy to come up with a new one every time. And also, it often takes a few offers. It takes a few reach outs. And if you are putting energy into each time coming up with a new activity, you're less likely to continue inviting someone out if it doesn't work the first time. And with parents, we know that like the likelihood of things overlapping is lower. So pick your options and then you can give the invite a couple times with less energy on your part so that hopefully it lines up. There is a group that you told me about that was really impactful in you making friends. Is it the Huey group?
Oh, yes. So that's a group. When I said I met my friend at the gym, I was like, you have a bump, I have a bump, we're having babies. The Huey group in my neighborhood, it's like, I think there's 7,000 people on it.
Wow.
Parents. And then they break off into, you have a summer baby, you have a fall baby, you have a winter baby. And then in those groups, it's like, okay, let's all meet up at the park. Let's all do X, Y, and Z. So from that first mom, we went to that Huey Summer Babies 2013 meetup. And that's where we found our other first mom couple and then another and then another. And yes, that was really, really impactful.
That's great. And I have other episodes out there for anybody that's listening about, as funny as this is, like how to use the internet as a filter to make friends. Like how to go find groups like that where whether it's mom friends or entrepreneur friends or podcaster friends or whatever your filter is that you're currently looking for, like how to go find that in groups. Quite often what people tell me is, like what you're saying, like Facebook groups.
Yeah.
And then showing up to those.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if we talked about this before, but now I am one of the moderators of that big group. And I make the small seasonal groups. And the reason I do it, it's actually kind of a pain and time consuming, but I know that it's so, so valuable that I just want to make sure that people have it, that people are able to go to those meetups and meet each other and make best friendships and lifelong friendships and build a support system like I did. And I'm not trying to brag to say that I do that, but I just like, as a person who's juggling 5,000 things, it's like 5,001 that's like so important to me that I'll always keep doing it.
I don't think that's a brag. I mean, I think that just goes back to community is very important to you. And you've seen the impact this has in your life. And like, you want to help other people do that first step. And like, not everyone is out there. I mean, hence the point of this podcast. Like, you would maybe be surprised because you're doing this very naturally. But the number of people who message me and are like, I've never ever considered using a Facebook group to make friends. Like, can I really make in-person friends that way? And I'm like, listen, a lot of people are doing that. Like, that is something that's working for people, whether it works for you or not. It's probably worth a try. Like, I just think it's great that you are still doing it because it just shows how important you think it is to help people, like, set them up for success.
Yeah, for sure. And I think another thing for people to remember is it doesn't stay that you are Facebook group friends. I mean, maybe because you like ask people questions, but like once you are up to the point where you're meeting people in person, right? And then you're like finding your people, like now it's real friendship and not online group chat friendship. It's like, okay, that is a vehicle you used to find your people. And that's amazing.
It's just a tool.
Yeah, exactly.
That helps get you to what you want. Like, another way to go about that would be to, I mean, this is something I've done, like, say when you're out and about in your day, you know, I'm looking for other mom friends who are entrepreneurs. I'm looking for other mom friends who stay at home or have the flexibility to meet up in the middle of the day. Like, get really specific and say that to people, or you can search online. Like, both are ways to do it. Both are a little uncomfortable, but pick your route here to put yourself out there.
Yeah.
You do have some mom entrepreneur friends. Like, that was a specific thing you were looking for at one point, right? You want to talk a little bit about like deciding that's something you needed and how you went out and sought out that specific group?
Sure. Actually, that's a group I was saying that I was out with last night that I was like, oh, this is such a friend-filled weekend And then such a happy coincidence that we're recording today. So when I was starting my business, and that was 2017, I had just had my second child and I was I was working in the school systems, and it was actually kind of like not the most pretty jump out. I got pushed out of a job on maternity leave, podcast for another day, but I really wanted to be in the communities of people doing this. I mean, specifically mom entrepreneurs, because like I knew that was my people, but I just like didn't have any friends doing this at the moment. And the first step in, like as we're talking about, like going up to someone at the playground and asking for their number, like something like that. A friend who was an acquaintance at the time, we had not even met in person, said on Instagram, "I'm speaking on this panel. I have an extra ticket. Do you want to come?" And I was like, sure, why not? Wrote her back, signed up to go. She's amazing and lovely. And, I remember being in that room and just being like, yes, like my business was like not even, it was like a seed. It was an idea. But I was in this room of people. This acquaintance, now friend, was speaking on a panel. I met a few other people who are now like my close friends, but like just people like doing the thing.
Mm-hmm.
I just threw myself in the room.
Yeah, you just showed up and started interacting with people. But I think the thing that I love about that story is like you knew the rooms you were trying to show up in,
mm-hmm.
which kind of goes back to that like filter piece. You got even more specific than just like, I want mom friends. And then when you got the invite, you said yes. That's the other key piece here. It's like saying yes. Not always. But like when you're trying to build those friendships, you have to show up in the beginning. Like that's a super specific group to
mm-hmm.
want.
Yeah.
How do you think that's like impacted your life to have a group maybe that specific, like who gets it, all the things you're juggling as much as they probably do?
Now I think about, and it was funny because actually one of the women is from that specific event. Another I met at another event. Another I met in a writing class. So it's kind of like they were pulled from all these places and then we all wove together the backgrounds and the business. None of us are in the same business. But I think it's kind of similar to like you meet people in the Facebook group and then you take it offline and then you just form the real friendships, right? Like what are people working with in their business? What are they struggling with? Not only business, but like family,
mm-hmm.
health, fun, like all of the things. And then you just become like IRL. We go on vacations together. We get our families together. We text all day. It was actually during the pandemic that particular group, we became friends not super long before that, but it was a text chain. It was
mm-hmm.
like a, 500 texts a day text chain, just being like, what's everyone doing? I'm hiding in the closet from my kids. When's it safe to go back to school? Like that whole thing. And that just like really, really gelled us together.
Yeah. I mean, not feeling alone in a very, very intense time.
Yeah.
Where everybody's in a very similar situation and just like being there for each other, even though you weren't even physically in the same space.
Right.
But maybe also with like the promise that knowing that when you could be in the same space, we were all like looking forward to, oh my gosh, I can't wait until we can go sit down and debrief and process this thing that we're all going through together.
Yes. I mean, I think we've been processing it since, but yes, I actually do remember, and I do remember the first reunion sort of that, we did it actually without our families, just like girls' weekend. And it was amazing. But yeah, there was like a whole lot of build up to that.
So when somebody's listening to this and they are thinking like, oh my gosh, okay, Leah is a business owner, a mom, an active community member, a engaged friend, a million other leadership coach. You're doing all these things. How does she have time for friends? What would your answer be?
The first thing that pops into my head is that you make the time. You just have to put it on your calendar, like you put on a podcast recording, a coaching session, time to do your taxes, and also friend time. Now, for me, it's like, I look forward to that. The group that was dinner last night, my friend was in town. So it was like, who can do dinner Sunday night? absolutely 100% make my way from Brooklyn to the Upper West Side, and you make the time. I'm always happy I did. I think my answer number 2 is a really supportive partner, especially like as a mom with kids and a family and a job, is like, I feel lucky about this. And also I reciprocate, but that if I want to go to the Upper West Side on a Sunday night, that like, he's great taking over and doing whatever he needs to do. Actually, last night he had a work thing too. So I have a cousin who lives in the city who I just dropped them off with. They had the best time ever. That reminds me of like family, Michigan. Mm-hmm. She's from Michigan too. But so yeah, making the time for it, finding the support, sometimes paying for the support. Like sometimes I pay for babysitters or whatever. I have so many answers to this. I could go on.
I mean, I think you should. No, but I think you should go on because like I have more questions about this because so many people, time is one of the biggest reasons people either aren't making friends, aren't seeing friends, like time. And I have my answers, but I'm just one person. Like I think crowdsourcing has many answers. Like one thing that might be there, like how much of your friendships are recurring? Like, do you have a lot of recurring things that happen with friends? You have the text messages, like that's a consistent.
Yeah. And those happy hours, those Friday nights, those kind of went away because during the pandemic, a lot of people left. The Sunday nights also during the pandemic, that kind of disappeared. So, I mean, seeing people at drop off for sure. That's a good one. Actually, during the pandemic, of course, this is not going to surprise you, made a whole other group of friends during the pandemic. We moved out to Long Island because our kids could still go to school there, which was amazing. And I got there and knew no one. So of course I had to create summer camp where I was. And we were also scared to be inside together. So we called it bonfire. It was Friday night. Same thing. Everyone come over as you are, don't come over, whatever. And we just light a fire and kids would run around. Adults would like snack, drink wine. And, that was the recurring thing. We actually do still have that semi-recurringly because a lot of those families are out on weekends. So that's the answer to like what's recurring right now. I also find that the recurring things, they come in phases. Like that Friday night happy hour was, I don't know, maybe 5 years of it. And then it sort of drops off. The Sunday night dinner, my sister and her wife moved to Jersey. So it's just, and now they have kids. So it's just like a little bit harder. So I actually like have to remember to go with the flow of what is recurring at the moment. And then, maybe it pauses for a while. Maybe we'll pick it back up again. Bonfire paused when we all left Long Island, but now we do it like on the weekends when we're out there. So just being able to sort of like ride the waves of those. It's hard sometimes. I remember the last bonfire, I was sobbing. I was like, no, but I created a whole summer camp and now summer camp's over, which is very much the feeling of when the summer's over.
Yeah. And I mean, we have a number of recurring things. Like we call it like family brunch, but it's friends. And again, like the pandemic kind of killed it and it's back, but the effort to get it back was harder than the first time because now our phases of life are different. We're balancing other things. So everybody wanted it back, but like it felt like so much more work this time than the first time it existed. And it's different now. And like, who knows how long it'll last. And at some point it'll pass on and maybe we'll find something new. Yeah,
exactly.
Okay. So the reason I asked the recurring, because that removes, I call it like friendship admin time, like the time to set it up and make the plans and go back and forth. It's just like, here's the time. So you're not doing that as much. So you really are investing, it sounds like, a good amount of time in setting things up. Or, and maybe this is something, because you're seeing people like at drop off and at places, like because you're present with a lot of these people that you've built community with, is it more just that it's easier to see people because when you see them at drop off, you're like, hey, we're going to this thing on Friday if you want to go. Do you think that helps you with time at all?
Yeah, for sure. I do think and it's just like, we don't have to like build up to it, or it's just like, okay, send me a text. I'll send you the ticket. Like, we'll meet there. I'm familiar with like so many people. Here are some other of my tricks for times and friends. I love working out with people because I work out anyways. And like often I can just like text one of my best friends who lives next to the gym and just be like, okay, 9 o'clock, see you there. Then usually like we'll walk home together, grab a coffee after. And it's like, I just like love that. Sometimes co-work dates, if I'm not on calls all day, like we can just like be in the same place and be on our computers and chat in between and have lunch. Like I absolutely love that. Another thing as a mom is like doing things with the kids together. Like everybody needs to feed their kids dinner. So like, why not just like bring them all to somebody's house and feed them, and then we can have the time together, and then it sort of combines them. Same with like a weekend together. Often I can have people at the house in the North Fork, but also like I have a friend in Brooklyn who just like always is like having sleepovers with other families. Like that's amazing. You get in that 24 hours of time. Your kids are having fun with each other or entertained, and like, you know.
Oh, I do. We love a sleepover. We have like friends who come and stay at our house all the time. We stay at their house, and like multiple sets of friends we do this with. We love doing it. I actually have an episode about a family and some of their closest friends. They do like family sleepovers. They swap houses. They do it once a month.
Oh my God.
It's like a full weekend. Yeah, I have an episode. Like sleepovers, underrated. And like you're saying, like the dinner, right? Like it's kind of chaotic at home anyways.
Exactly. Exactly. Combine the chaos. You know, you get friend time in, everybody's pretty much happier. One of the things I love about the weekend or the sleepover is like some friends who maybe aren't in my direct neighborhood that I don't see at drop off or the gym or whatever. It's like, okay, we can do this weekend. And it feels like you're caught up on 6 months in one shot. And then it's kind of like, you know, you still like call and text and catch up, but like.
There's something about just like being really present, like existing together for a couple days that, yeah, I think is so impactful that would require like 10 dinners out at a restaurant.
Exactly.
To get the same feeling of connection.
Exactly. Yeah, I love that.
That's why we love them too. It's kind of like immersive. Like I really do get to see our friends' life and their routine and what they do and where they go. And like same if they come and stay at our house. It's like actually getting a real snapshot, maybe the way you did when you were, you know, younger and like in each other's houses all the time kind of thing that we just maybe don't get as adults quite as much anymore.
Yeah. My favorite time of that is like the waking up time where everyone's just like drinking their coffee. There's nothing to do. You're just like, I don't know, kids are playing with trains. Like just is. We all do it every morning. Don't think about it, but like then you're doing it together.
We have the same favorite time of those hangouts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, I'm always one of the early risers. So I love to see like who comes down first, right? Because there's sometimes a bunch of people show up at the same time, but sometimes it's like one person and we'll be sitting there and I actually get, 30 minutes with one friend, but I don't know who it is.
Yeah.
I don't know who it is.
It's like a lottery.
Or it could be a kid. And now I'm like reading books on the floor because that's the other joy. Like we're obviously don't have any kids, but like our friends stay at our house. It's just like, oh, well, Auntie Alex is downstairs.
Love it. I love it.
Like, we're going to lay in bed a little bit longer.
Oh, the best. From a parent perspective, that's just like pure gold.
Well, and for me, it's like, I love getting one-on-one time with the kiddos.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, oh, okay, I don't really know exactly, again, like figuring it all out, right? Do you eat breakfast immediately when you wake up? Like as a kiddo, do you eat in an hour? I don't know. So I'm like awkwardly offering snacks and like, like, you know, do we want to read a book? Do we want to play with trains? I don't know. Like, but I like figuring it out because I'm learning about my little niece or nephew.
Yeah.
And like, they're fine. They're safe. They're good. But like, I'm just like trying to figure out who they are.
Right.
It's like it's a fun thing that I wouldn't get otherwise necessarily if I just went for dinner for an hour and a half and left.
Exactly.
And I cherish those moments.
Yeah.
So one other thing, I think in thinking about your broad community and all the other balls you have up in the air, what is your take on like showing up for people? Like you have a number of people to show up for.
That's a great question. I think that there's so many different ways you can do it. Obviously, my favorite way is in person, if I can. I try my very hardest to be at the weddings and the funerals. I usually am. I usually can make it. And I think if I can't, or if someone can't, there's so many other ways. I mean, sending food, I said, is one of my favorite ways, but also just keeping in touch with somebody. There's often that like you check in with somebody for a week or 2 weeks. I really find that it's like the plus 2 weeks, right? Plus 1 month, plus 6 months. That is really important. Remembering, if I'm thinking about it, like if somebody has passed away, a birthday or anniversary, like those types of things, those are all ways to show up for somebody. Sending things in the snail mail is something I like to do. If something like made me think of you, or even like a text that's a picture of something that, reminds me of you. So like, I think that those are all ways that we can show up for each other and stay present for each other. You can be really creative, like my son and my nephew talking on the phone every single morning, right? Like it's, you can be really creative about it.
The thing I love about your answer is that the way that I think you're looking at this takes a little pressure off of the panic when something happens. Feeling like because you have all these balls up in the air, you have to like drop everything to be there that first week because you've given yourself permission. Like, it's okay. Other people will do that. Like, they're not going to be alone. I will show up, but like, it might be in a couple weeks or a couple months. It makes it easier, I would think, to like kind of integrate that in because you can prepare for it a little bit more.
Right.
And it's more sustainable.
Yeah. And could also, I mean, I don't think this is in every case or every situation, could also be as valuable or more valuable than, I think about a friend who lost a parent and I couldn't make it to the funeral, which was, that weekend or the next weekend. And at the same time, that week or that weekend, I made a trip. I made a plane ticket to say like, okay, I'm coming. I forgot if it was like 3 months or 6 months, and just being like, I'm going to fly to you and spend the weekend in December. Right. And just like, we'll be together and mark the moment. And I think it's the intention of like, I'm doing this. It's not maybe the traditional way, but it is a way. And again, like could be 3 or 6 months, could be like the time when the flowers stop showing up and the cards, whatever, and things are wrapped up in a bow. So I think that you can be creative and it can be really powerful.
Super powerful. And like you are showing up in parameters that also allow for you to not have to drop everything in your life. And I love that you called out being intentional because that's something I talk a lot about is like quite often we're just trying to follow what we should do. And sometimes that can be like really overwhelming or it's not your strength or it just doesn't fit in your life right now. So like taking a moment to think about what actually is impactful here, like what do I have capacity for, and pausing can save you so much time trying to do things that maybe aren't even the right fit.
And I'm also just thinking about like thinking outside of the box about what you can do. I mean, a friend recently invited me over during a hard time, invited me over and was like, it was a sleepover. Do you want to sleep over and I'll rub your shoulders and make you breakfast? And I was like, that is like the nicest. Honestly, like as a mom juggling a million things, I wouldn't have even like thought of that as an invitation, a thing to do. Like I would have sent pizza because that's what I do. But I was like, that is just the kindest, most specific. I really like things that are specific, when you make an offer, but it just like really hit home. I was like, wow, that is like a really kind, intentional, thoughtful offer.
Very specific. And I love that because, like in order to be that specific, she must have spent time thinking about what might be nice for you and what she could provide and like what sounded right for her.
Yeah.
And the added bonus of like some quality time together, which never hurts. Like that's always lovely, but besides breakfast.
Right. You and I already talked about that coffee, eggs, reading on the floor time, which is just the best.
So, Leah, if somebody is out there and they want to build kind of that, I mean, I'm not even going to say like how to make a friend. You have really built this thriving, broader support system around you that supports you in a variety of ways. and you support those communities in a variety of ways. And you've done something that a lot of people just like don't think is possible, which is kind of emulate that family feeling once you've moved away from family for whatever reason. What would you say to somebody who wants to like start trying to build that for themselves?
I would say just start. Well, two things. One, if what I have is something you want, and maybe not everybody wants it, or like maybe it's something within it, right? Like I want a group of mom friends, or I want one best friend, or whatever it is. So I would say, or I want a massive spider web of all these communities. You know what I mean? Like maybe that's a thing you want. One, try and define it. What is it you want, really? And then two, just start. Just ask for the number at the playground. Just join the Facebook group. Just like you said, speak out loud. Do you know anyone who has time during the day to meet up? Just show up, put yourself in the rooms. And also, there will be times going from point A, this is like what you want. You're starting from zero. Also knowing that you might have some setbacks in it. Right? You might ask for the number at the playground and that ends up not being your bestie, right? You go out for coffee twice and they're not your person. So do it again. Right? And maybe you're trying to do the recurring thing and you do it 3 times and it falls off. Like, okay, then try something else. So I would say like that's my 3-step is just start, put yourself out there, ride the waves, and have the vision for it at the very beginning. I said that out of order, but I think it makes sense.
Yeah. And I will say for anybody who is listening to that, like, I really firmly believe that this is a skill set. Like, you get used to being a little uncomfortable asking for the phone number. You get used to reflecting on what you want because that's going to change over time. You get used to creating the recurring things and letting them go, to doing the friend admin and then having a season of life where it's just like really not sustainable for you to do that because you just have to prioritize other things and then coming back to it. Like, doing this stuff builds familiarity. And I think that is so important because if you move again, if things change, if you have some big life pivot, like, you can rebuild. I don't know how much I've talked about this story on the podcast, but that like family brunch group, at a certain point, we were very lucky. We had so many of us lived locally here in Seattle that those family brunches, if everybody came, were probably like 25, 30 people.
Wow.
And we had 5 sets of friends move away in a 6-month period. And I just remember being like, because I love like that big group feeling and what you're saying, like the inviting people to things and whatnot. And I just remember having this moment being like, obviously very sad, but realizing like I can build this again. There's no reason we can't connect with people or friends of friends or like bring people in. Like, I know how to do the work to do this again. So for anybody who's like, that's a lot of effort, it's a skill set and it'll last you forever.
Yeah.
To build what you want.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this has been a really rich episode. There are so many like specific examples, but also just like new ways of thinking. And I really appreciate all of your shares. If you were to leave guests with just like any final things you want to say to anybody.
I mean, I think I said it like 15 times, but I think just starting, give out your number, join the group, put yourself in the room. I think if friendship and community is something you're really looking for, that's like the key.
Great. Leah, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. I feel like we could talk like 5 more episodes.
Well, keep that in mind.
Okay.
Careful what you ask for.
Yeah, this was so great. It was such a great conversation. I love talking to you.
This episode was so rich with specific examples and takeaways. I mean, actionable things you can go implement in your life. I love these kind of episodes. Let's review some of the takeaways you might have had today. Number 1, think about what you want. It doesn't have to look like what Leah's built. It doesn't have to look like what I've talked about on this podcast. Forget all the shoulds. how you think it should look, and think about what you want it to look like. Spend some time thinking about that. What are you trying to build? Number 2, think about some of your opening lines. Do that homework now so that when the moment presents itself, you aren't scrambling, you're ready to go. Number 3, decide that this is a priority. Make space for it. Put yourself out there. Decide that when the opportunities do present themselves, you'll try and figure out a way to say yes to the invite. And number 4, now that you've figured out what you want, put yourself in those places. Join the Facebook groups or become a regular at a local park or spot or group. And finally, just do it. Just do the thing. Don't come at me, Nike. I want to thank Leah so much for this episode. Just naturally, she gave so many examples that we can all implement in our lives. Even if you're not a parent, I mean, I have so many takeaways from this episode, and I'm not currently a mom. So with that, as you can see, she is doing the thing. She is putting herself out there. She is actively building community in so many areas of her life, and not just for herself, but for others. You should go, 1, join her newsletter. Head to her website. We'll link it in the show notes, leahwisemanfink.com, and sign up for her newsletter. Because looking back at her archives, some of her most recent newsletters are about mom friends and building community. And number 2, go give her a follow on Instagram at Leah Wiseman Fink. With that, I'll talk to you next week. Thank you for listening to this episode of Friendship IRL. I am so honored to have these conversations with you, but don't let the chat die here. Send me a voice message. I created a special website just to chat with you. You can find it at alex.chat. You can also find me on Instagram. My handle at it's Alex Alexander, or go ahead and leave a review wherever you prefer to listen to podcasts. Now, if you want to take this conversation a step further, send this episode to a friend. Tell them you found it interesting, and use what we just talked about as a conversation starter the next time you and your friend hang out. No need for a teary goodbye. I'll be back with a new episode next week.